Some of the most intelligent minds you will ever encounter don't fail loudly. They don't collapse in public. They don't beg for attention or validation. Instead, they do something far more misunderstood. They withdraw, quietly, deliberately, almost invisibly. And the world mistakes that silence for weakness, when in truth, it is often the consequence of seeing too much, feeling too deeply, and understanding too clearly. Intelligence is not just the ability to solve problems or process information faster than others. True intelligence is heightened awareness. It is the capacity to notice patterns beneath behavior, motives beneath words, contradictions beneath systems that everyone else accepts without question. And once you see those layers, you cannot unsee them. Conversations start to feel rehearsed. Ambitions begin to look hollow. The noise of society grows louder, not because it increases, but because your perception sharpens. At some point, the intelligent mind realizes something unsettling. Much of the world is driven not by truth, meaning, or growth, but by distraction, fear, and unconscious imitation. People chase goals they never chose. They repeat beliefs they never examined. They perform roles they don't understand. And when you recognize this, participating blindly becomes exhausting. Not because you are better, but because pretending not to know becomes unbearable. So the mind pulls back, not in arrogance, not in defeat, but in self-defense. This withdrawal is rarely dramatic. It looks like fewer conversations, fewer social obligations, less tolerance for surface-level engagement. It looks like choosing silence over argument, solitude over crowds, depth over noise, and from the outside it can look like disengagement, apathy, or even failure. But internally, something far more intense is happening. A recalibration, a reckoning, a quiet refusal to live unconsciously. Psychologically, this moment is critical. When awareness outpaces meaning, tension arises. The intelligent mind feels out of place not because it lacks belonging, but because it refuses false belonging. It senses that something about the way the world operates is misaligned, yet it hasn't fully discovered its own role within it. That gap between insight and purpose is where withdrawal is born. And here's the truth few people will ever say out loud. Many intelligent people don't leave the world because they hate it. They step back because they care too much to participate dishonestly. They can't unsee the cost of shallow living. They can't unknow the damage of unconscious choices. They feel responsible, not for fixing everyone, but for not betraying themselves. But this space, this withdrawal, is not meant to be permanent. It is a threshold. Every powerful transformation begins with separation. Every great thinker, creator, or leader has passed through a phase where they stepped away from the crowd to confront their own mind. Because before you can contribute something meaningful to the world, you must first understand what the world has been doing to you, its expectations, its conditioning, its invisible rules. Withdrawal, then, is not disappearance, it is preparation. Yet this phase is dangerous if misunderstood. Stay too long, and clarity turns into isolation. Insight turns into cynicism. Silence turns into stagnation. The mind that once withdrew to protect its depth can begin to use solitude as a shield against action. And that is not intelligence. That is fear wearing the mask of wisdom. The real question is not why intelligent minds withdraw. The real question is what they do next. Because the mind that sees deeply carries a responsibility. Not to conform, not to escape, but to return, stronger, clearer, and more intentional, to bring back something forged in silence, a perspective, a creation, a truth that cuts through the noise. If you recognize yourself here, understand this. Your withdrawal is not a flaw. It is a signal, a sign that you are standing at the edge of a deeper life. But insight alone is not the destination. It is the ignition point. The world does not need you smaller, quieter, or hidden forever. It needs you integrated, grounded, awake. What you do with this moment, this pause, this distance, this awareness, will determine whether your intelligence becomes a refuge or a force. The moment awareness deepens, life stops feeling simple. not harder in a practical sense, but heavier in a psychological one. Because intelligence doesn't just add knowledge, it removes illusions. And illusions are what make the world feel easy to move through. Once they fall away, you begin carrying a weight most people never feel, the burden of awareness. An intelligent mind doesn't just observe the world, it registers it. It notices emotional undercurrents in a room before words are spoken. It senses when enthusiasm is performative, when confidence is hollow, when systems are quietly broken but loudly defended. While others react, the intelligent mind reflects. While others consume, it questions. And this constant awareness creates friction between the inner world and the outer one. Carl Jung understood this deeply. He recognized that consciousness is not evenly distributed. Some people live primarily within the collective unconscious, absorbing norms, values, and beliefs without examining them. Others begin to awaken from it. And when that happens, they don't feel superior, they feel alone. Because the moment you start seeing the machinery behind behavior, it becomes impossible to participate with the same innocence. This is where the burden begins. You start to realize that much of human behavior is driven not by intention, but by conditioning. Fear dressed up as ambition, insecurity disguised as confidence, desire shaped by comparison rather than purpose. And when you see this, conversations change. Achievements feel strangely empty. Success, as defined by the crowd, no longer satisfies. The intelligent mind doesn't lose interest in life. It loses interest in illusion. Psychologically, this creates what can only be described as existential fatigue, not sadness, not hopelessness. Fatigue, the tiredness of constantly filtering noise, the exhaustion of being aware in environments that reward unconsciousness, the weariness of knowing that many problems persist not because they're unsolvable, but because people are unwilling to confront themselves. And here's the paradox. The more intelligent and aware you become, the harder it is to explain why you feel this way. Because to those still immersed in the surface of life, your discomfort seems unnecessary. They'll tell you to relax, to stop thinking so much, to just enjoy things. But what they don't understand is that you are not choosing depth, it chose you. Awareness is not a switch you can turn off when it becomes inconvenient. So the intelligent mind pulls inward, not to escape responsibility, but to manage it. This withdrawal is the psyche's attempt to restore balance. When the external world overwhelms the internal compass, retreat becomes a form of regulation. It's the mind saying, I need space to integrate what I see, because without integration, awareness fragments, and fragmented awareness leads to anxiety, cynicism, or numbness. Jung believed that when consciousness expands faster than identity, the individual feels disoriented. You know too much to live as you once did, but not enough yet to know how to live next. That liminal space between who you were and who you are becoming is psychologically intense. It can feel isolating, even frightening. But it is also the birthplace of meaning. The problem is not awareness. The problem is unchanneled awareness. When insight has nowhere to go, it turns inward and becomes self-criticism. When perception has no outlet, it becomes overthinking. When intelligence is not anchored to purpose, it collapses into exhaustion. This is why so many intelligent minds feel drained rather than empowered. Not because they lack strength, but because they are carrying insight without direction. And yet, buried inside this fatigue is a profound opportunity, because the very awareness that makes life feel heavier also makes it richer. It gives you access to truth beyond appearances. It equips you to create, to lead, to articulate what others feel but cannot name. But only if you learn to transform awareness from a burden into a tool. Withdrawal, then, is not the problem. Avoidance is. The intelligent mind must eventually move from observation to embodiment, from seeing the world clearly to choosing how to stand within it. Awareness without action is torment. Awareness with intention is power. If you feel the weight of understanding pressing on you, Recognize this. It is not there to crush you. It is there to shape you, to refine your values, to sharpen your direction, to force you to stop living on autopilot and start living deliberately. You are not overwhelmed because you are weak. You are overwhelmed because you are awake. And awakening is never comfortable, but it is always the beginning of something irreversible. There is a moment when withdrawal stops being a sanctuary and starts becoming a cage. It doesn't happen loudly. There's no alarm, no clear line where protection turns into paralysis. It happens subtly, when reflection hardens into judgment, when solitude turns into avoidance, when insight becomes an excuse to stay untouched by the world you claim to understand. This is where the intelligent mind must be brutally honest with itself. Carl Jung called this confrontation the encounter with the shadow, not the dark, dramatic villain people imagine, but the unexamined parts of the self that hide behind noble language. Fear that disguises itself as independence, insecurity that masks itself as superiority, wounds that dress up as wisdom, and the sharper mind, the easier it is to rationalize these defenses as virtue. This is the danger point, because intelligence gives you words. It gives you explanations. It gives you the ability to justify almost anything. You can convince yourself that you don't need people because they're shallow, that you don't need to act because the world is broken, that you don't need to try because you already see how it ends. But beneath those explanations, there may be something far less flattering: fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of being misunderstood, fear of being ordinary after all. The shadow thrives in withdrawal without purpose. Jung warned that what we refuse to confront within ourselves does not disappear, it gains power. When intelligent minds retreat without engaging their shadow, isolation slowly becomes a comfort zone. And comfort, when it replaces growth, becomes a silent enemy. You stop risking. You stop testing your ideas in reality. You stop allowing friction to sharpen you. Insight stagnates. Depth turns heavy, and the mind that once withdrew to preserve its clarity begins to decay in its own echo. This is where many gifted people get stuck, not because they lack brilliance, but because they mistake distance for mastery. The truth is uncomfortable but necessary. You cannot fully understand yourself without relationship, resistance, and engagement. You cannot integrate your shadow in isolation. The parts of you that are impatient, defensive, controlling, fearful, or proud only reveal themselves when the world pushes back, and if you avoid that push, you avoid your own completion. Solitude clarifies, but isolation calcifies. The intelligent mind must learn the difference. Solitude is chosen. It is active. It has direction. Isolation is passive. It is avoidance dressed as peace. One sharpens you. The other slowly dulls you while whispering that you're already sharp enough. And here's the deeper psychological trap. When you stay withdrawn too long, you begin to build an identity around being separate, around being the observer, not the participant, around being the one who sees, not the one who risks. And once that identity hardens, returning to the world feels threatening, not because the world is dangerous, but because it might challenge the story you've told yourself. That's when intelligence turns against itself. Jung believed that individuation, the process of becoming whole, requires integration, not escape. You don't eliminate the shadow by rejecting it. You integrate it by recognizing it as yours. The arrogance, the fear, the anger, the longing to be seen. None of these make you weak. What weakens you is pretending they don't exist. This is the turning point, the moment when withdrawal must evolve. You must ask yourself a question that cuts deeper than comfort. Am I alone because I am growing, or because I am hiding? Am I silent because I am listening, or because I am afraid to speak? Am I detached because I see clearly, or because I don't want to be vulnerable? These questions are not meant to shame you. They are meant to wake you up, because the intelligent mind that refuses this confrontation risks becoming bitter instead of wise, critical instead of creative, detached instead of powerful, Insight without humility becomes rigidity. Depth without courage becomes stagnation. But when you face your shadow, when you admit it where withdrawal has protected you and where it has limited you, you reclaim your momentum. You stop using intelligence as armor and start using it as a tool. You stop observing life from a distance and begin shaping it with intention. This is not a call to abandon solitude. It is a call to give it purpose. You were never meant to disappear into your mind. You were meant to return from it, integrated, grounded, and unafraid to engage. Because the world doesn't need more spectators who see what's wrong. It needs individuals who have confronted themselves deeply enough to act without illusion. And that courage begins the moment you stop hiding behind insight and start embodying it. Withdrawal reaches its highest value only when it is transformed into direction. Otherwise, it's just pause without purpose. The intelligent mind was never meant to stay in the cave forever. It was meant to forge something there and bring it back into the world. This is where power is born. Not from endless thinking, but from intentional integration. Carl Jung believed that solitude is sacred only when it serves individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, not who the world conditioned you to be. That means your withdrawal must become active. It must have a mission. Because awareness without structure leaks energy. Insight without application dissolves into frustration. The mind needs a channel, or it turns on itself. The first shift is this: stop treating solitude as escape and start treating it as training. Every moment alone is an opportunity to clarify values instead of ruminating on problems. Ask sharper questions. What actually matters to me, beyond approval, beyond status, beyond fear? What drains me because it's misaligned, and what energizes me because it's true? Intelligent minds regain strength when they stop collecting thoughts and start distilling principles. Jung emphasized dialogue with the unconscious, not passive daydreaming, but active engagement. This is where tools matter. Writing is not optional, it is essential. Not polished writing, raw, honest, unfiltered. Put your thoughts on paper so they stop circling your mind like trapped energy. Journaling turns confusion into language. Language turns chaos into structure. Structure restores authority over your inner world. Then comes creation. The intelligent mind suffocates without output. You were not built only to understand. You were built to express. Create something that carries your insight into form. Write, build, design, teach, speak, code, mentor, whatever medium fits your nature. Creation is how intelligence becomes tangible. It's how solitude pays dividends. The goal is not perfection. The goal is translation, turning inner clarity into external contribution. This is where many people hesitate. Because creation exposes you. It invites feedback, resistance, misunderstanding. But this is precisely why it's necessary. Jung understood that psyche strengthens through tension, not comfort. Friction with the world refines you. Engagement grounds you. Without it, insight remains abstract, impressive in theory, useless in practice. Another critical shift is selective engagement. You do not need to re-enter the world indiscriminately. Intelligent minds burn out when they try to meet everyone on every level. That's not strength, it's dilution. Choose depth over breadth. Choose environments, conversations, and commitments that respect thoughtfulness and reward integrity. You don't owe access to your energy. You owe loyalty to your direction. This is not withdrawal anymore. This is strategy. Learn to move between solitude and engagement like breath. Inhale to reflect, exhale to act. When reflection becomes heavy, it's time to engage. When engagement becomes noisy, it's time to withdraw. This rhythm keeps the mind sharp and the spirit resilient. It prevents isolation without forcing conformity. And here's the most important psychological reframe of all. Stop waiting until you feel ready. Readiness is not a feeling, it's a decision. The intelligent mind often delays action because it sees too many variables, too many risks, too many ways it could go wrong. But clarity does not come before action. It comes from action. Jung believed that transformation requires participation. You discover who you are by doing, not by endlessly thinking about who you might become. Use your insight to guide your steps, not paralyze them. The world does not need you to be loud. It needs you to be precise. It doesn't need you to blend in. It needs you to stand in alignment. Your withdrawal has already given you what most people never gain, the ability to see clearly. Now your responsibility is to move with that clarity, to act deliberately, speak intentionally, and create courageously. This is how withdrawal becomes power, not by returning as you were, but by returning integrated, less reactive, more grounded, less scattered, more decisive. You stop trying to fix the world and start influencing it by example. Your presence alone carries weight because it's backed by reflection and restraint. Solitude sharpened you. Now direction will unleash you. And when you step forward, not impulsively, not arrogantly, but with quiet certainty, you realize something profound. The very distance you once needed has prepared you to engage without losing yourself. That is real strength. That is intelligence in motion. There comes a moment when staying hidden costs more than stepping forward. A moment when silence stops being protection and starts becoming betrayal, not of the world, but of yourself. This is the moment every intelligent mind must face, whether consciously or not, because insight that never leaves the inner world slowly turns into regret. And regret is far heavier than risk. You were never meant to disappear forever. You were meant to return, not louder, not diluted, but anchored, clear, purposeful, changed. Carl Jung believed that individuation is not a retreat from life, but a fuller participation in it, not becoming someone else, but becoming so fully yourself that your presence reshapes the space you enter. That is the real destination of withdrawal, not isolation, but integration, not escape, but embodiment. The world does not need another distracted voice shouting for attention. It needs people who have stood in silence long enough to know what actually matters. People who act not from impulse, but from alignment. People whose words carry weight because they are backed by reflection, discipline, and self-knowledge. That is what you bring back from withdrawal, gravity. Returning with purpose does not mean conforming, it means choosing where you stand. It means engaging without losing your depth, aching without abandoning your nuance, acting without betraying your values. It means you stop waiting for the world to make sense before you move and start becoming a stabilizing force within it. This is where resolve is forged. You will be misunderstood at times. That is inevitable. Depth always is. But misunderstanding is a small price to pay compared to the cost of self-erasure. The intelligent mind must accept this truth. Clarity does not guarantee acceptance, and it never has. What it guarantees is integrity, and integrity compounds. Do not underestimate the power of one integrated individual. One person who thinks clearly, speaks honestly, and acts consistently disrupts unconscious systems simply by existing. You don't need to fight the noise, you outgrow it. You don't need to convince everyone, you influence those who are ready, and you don't need permission to begin. The call to action is simple, but not easy. Stop postponing your contribution. Whatever you uncovered in solitude, bring it into form, share it, build it, speak it, test it against reality, let it evolve through contact with the world. Growth does not happen in theory, it happens in friction, in feedback, in motion, and yes, you may stumble, you may revise, you may outgrow what you create. That is not failure, that is evidence of life. The only real failure for an intelligent mind is staying locked in potential. Remember this, the world has no shortage of opinions. It has a shortage of people who have actually done the inner work. People who have faced their shadow, people who have clarified their values, people who act not because they crave validation, but because alignment demands expression. T. Hat is who you are becoming. So step forward, not recklessly but decisively. Let your actions be fewer but more intentional. Let your words be measured but undeniable. Let your presence reflect the depth you earned in silence. This is not about saving the world. It's about refusing to shrink in it. The path ahead will not always be comfortable, but comfort was never your calling. Meaning was, contribution was, wholeness was, and wholeness requires movement. You have already done the hard part, seeing clearly. Now comes the brave part, living accordingly. Return with purpose, stand where you are needed, act from what you know, and trust this: the world may not immediately celebrate your clarity, but it will feel it, and in time, it will respond to it. Because when an intelligent mind stops hiding and starts embodying its insight, it doesn't just change its own life, it quietly raises the standard for what's possible.